Hi, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Gamers at the End of the World. I'm Ty Justice.
I'm GCPR.
Today we have a very special guest with us. We've mentioned him a few times before, but now with us today we have the legendary Retrobutta.
Oh, man.
Applause.
A very special guest. I love that.
My secret lover.
Yes. Good.
Well, it's not so secret now.
I have to edit all that out. Or leave it in. Maybe
Leave it in, yeah.
Why not? But
wait till D hears this.
I know. She's going to be surprised.
Who's D?
Let's do that. All right.
Oh, you know, yeah, that sounds way better.
Way better.
Wow, this is a hell of a difference.
The mic's turned on.
Wow,
that's pretty good. So today we're going to start out with a little bit of the news, and in the shop where we all kind of met, we talk about this from time to time because Nintendo is a big player in the game. So and right now they're always in the news. So we're going to start with Nintendo. So since this release of the Switch 2, people have been Nintendo's been cracking down on a lot of ROM sites, and they've always been known to be litigious when it comes to ROM sites. But now they're becoming crazy and using the FBI. Though nobody says the FBI, but we all know who's getting the FBI to do it because they're only shutting down sites that have like Nintendo ROMs on them.
Yeah,
Sony's not like let's get them, But
like, whatever.
Nintendo definitely is, and. With the ferocity that they shut down these ROM sites and prosecute, you're kind of like thinking of it's funny how they don't take down pedophiles or anything like that. More serious matters.
They're working on it. They're working on it.
Right, but with Nintendo ROMs, you're out of here.
Yeah,
That's
you're
the most
out of here.
evil
If they
thing.
only put that much effort into the pedophiles that they do with Nintendo, this would be a better world. But unfortunately, priorities are priorities.
Exactly.
And Nintendo and Mario need their... what do you call it?
Their pound of flesh.
Yeah, exactly.
Mario's the real victim here.
Right? Poor guy. I mean, he just hasn't done so well in the past 40 years.
Yeah. Right?
But
really suffering.
And the sad thing is we've all kind of grown up to love... We loved Nintendo as kids because they kind of shaped our gaming history, just like Disney shaped a lot of our view of the world with cartoons. Nintendo did that with games. And usually our first foray into gaming was something Nintendo or Mario-esque, depending on when you get into it. And just to kind of grow up, and it's a little disillusioning. I mean, because a lot of us, again, if you grow up watching Star Wars, or if you grow up watching a lot of shows where you root for the rebels, and then the Empire ends up taking over, and you realize that these companies are actually the Empire. I think George Lucas is actually still very anti-Empire and anti-fascist, and he's very open that way, and even now with all his billions. But he was also an innovator. But with a lot of the companies we grew up loving as kids, now we see them as just these like evil conglomerates. And the sad thing is they were that thing the whole time.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's two generations when it comes to Nintendo. The ones that grew up in an era where internet wasn't accessible or wasn't a thing yet, where it was very hard to come by as far as what was happening with Nintendo. Maybe through Nintendo Power, but independent sources of the bad of Nintendo wasn't really accessible compared to the younger generation, where if Nintendo's messing up, you can just look it up and see as to why and what the opinion is with Reddit, with YouTube, with social media.
Our feeds, it just automatically pops up because the algorithms are gaming, and Nintendo will pop up.
As soon as the Switch came out, like a week later, the Switch 2, there was already the backlash on the cart, the flash cart, the pricing of the cart. So you get that news right away, and you're like, damn, okay, they are kind of fucking up,
Right.
So I think there's the two generations. And we could be a little more harsher with our critique.
Yeah.
Considering we were there from the beginning.
Right. No, it's true. And again, like we all kind of grow up with it and see it for what it is. But I mean, do you think that's going to hurt its brand over time? It hasn't yet.
It hasn't yet, but I think at one point, it will catch up to them. Just like any great empire, I think, like you said at the beginning, Nintendo's at the top right now. But I do see it with this, like, action that they took with the Switch 2 and how they're kind of changing the market. I think the backlash is going to catch up to them, And what a great time for other companies to capitalize.
Yeah.
The ones that fell in the shadows during the rise and the prime of Nintendo. I think personally this would be an excellent time for Sega to make a comeback. I think this is the moment. Like, you're receiving that backlash. Let's if you're that marketing guy and you want to bring Sega back to its glory days, this is the time to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like Nintendo never had their chance with handhelds, because
Yeah.
we've talked
Yeah.
about this before. And we talk about the Game Gear, which was great, but even better than the Game Gear, which I believe we're going to talk about in the next segment, was going to be the the SEGA Nomad.
Oh, Nomad.
Which is was just leagues ahead of its time, you know. And I never had one. I don't
fine
think
wine.
I think any of us did. Did you have one as a kid?
I had a Nomad.
So
yeah,
you had a
yeah.
Nomad.
I had a Nomad, not when it came out, but when it was cheap and like nobody really cared for it.
Right.
But this was like late 90s, early 2000s is when I had a Nomad in my possession.
Oh yeah, and it came out what, 95?
When it was cheap.
Yeah. Oh.
Because
Okay.
like now it's pricey. From
Oh, my God.
A working one
Yeah.
is pricey,
Yeah.
and it was in a way dockable, tethered, but we
Right,
can go
same
into that
concept.
later.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I was going to say with Nintendo, there have been points in its history where it has kind of been humbled. And if we go back, we talk about handhelds a lot because it's kind of like, we all love handhelds. But remember when they did things like the 3DS, which didn't do well, and they had to cut its price by like a third, I think, by the end. And there were times where around that time the GameCube didn't do very well, and there were other kind of like a lot of misses in one chunk, and that really brought them down to where the president would take a cut and pay as opposed to firing a bunch of people and his staff. He was the president of Nintendo at the time years ago. They would take those measures, but now it just seems like they're just this. They had that moment where they just really had to kind of eat humble pie for a few years because they had great competitors like Sony with the PSP. The
Oh my
PSP
God.
was unbelievable. Blew anything Nintendo put out handheld out of the water. And you had that period, and now you also have a lot of stuff we always talk about now, like the Steam Deck, the Rogue Ally, the MSI Claw, the Legion Lenovo Go, that can emulate all that stuff. And then like even there's the retro, like so many retro handhelds that can handle all the old Nintendo stuff, the emulation, which I think is why, because Nintendo still hasn't come to the field, playing fair with all their older titles, all their older IP.
Yeah.
So I think like there's so many independent companies that have all these crazy machines, these crazy handhelds that most people don't even know about. But like if you're on TikTok, you see most of my feed is like food and gaming.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you see like so much competition when it comes to that. I think that's why they're becoming so ferocious with their IP when it comes to shutting down the ROM sites now.
Yeah, I think the playing field has been leveled out with Nintendo. You have a bunch of new competitors and ones that are gaining steam, like the Steam Deck, no pun intended. But when it came out, I didn't hear a peep about the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
From fellow collectors, from gamers. I mean, people were just like, yeah, it's cool, but I'll stick to this. I'll stick to my PSP still.
Yeah.
Whatever was the thing at the time when Steam came out.
It was very much a PC world thing.
Yeah, I think so too. And now with what's happening with the Nintendo and then emulation, I think what's happening is now people are realizing that, well, I can just do this on my Steam Deck, which does everything, which is dockable, and I can do stuff myself.
Yep.
And let me be clear. The government has been shutting down ROM sites since the 90s. It's just, maybe they've upped it now because obviously there's more money involved. But I think that with ROM sites, they're going to be around forever.
Because you've been around the industry for a while, since you were like a kid.
Yeah.
Because of your family and your history with it, and you yourself are a collector of many things. And
Yes.
a lot of like memorabilia, a lot of old stuff. I forgot to ask you that when we introduced you, but kind of what is your thing? Because Retrobutta is your title online too.
Yeah, it's funny because when people see Retrobutta and they see the little character, it's basically a stick of butter with a handheld. Because I started off as a video game collector and as a repair guy, but I've always had an affinity for toys. That's what I loved growing up. My parents would gift me G.I. Joes as a birthday gift all the way up as I was like until 16, 17. So I was still playing with that shit at that age, and I didn't care. I loved it. Now, did I sit there and crash them together in the tub at the age of 17 and 18? No, because I was out doing other things. But I always had my collection out, and I come from collectors. My mom collected the Barbies, and she had her Detolf, her Barbies displayed in there with the lighting, and my dad was an RC helicopter guy and an RC airplane guy and RC robots, and that was his jam. So like I saw the collection, I grew up surrounded by it. So of course, naturally, I would become a collector, I would think. My siblings aren't, but I embraced it. But yeah, I love toys because I also like with the fixing. of consoles, I like to fix broken toys.
Right.
You know, that's my jam. If I see a figure with a broken arm, or the packaging, the cardboard box is messed up, I want to bring it back to maybe as best as I can to make it look nice. And if not, it's a challenge for me,
Right.
you know. So I like to keep a balance. You know, I don't think I'm more toy heavy than video game heavy. And now I have a bleeding happening where I'm looking for more of like the video game merch, the video game toys.
Yeah.
You know, Crash Bandicoot figures from Resorus, or the early Moby Dick Resident Evil, and the Palisades, or companies that really aren't around anymore.
Yeah.
But that's my number one thing. Obviously, you guys know Resident Evil was just something in the video game world when it first came out, just blew my mind.
Yeah,
Like,
how many like Juan, doesn't he have like a storage unit full of like all of the Resident Evil
Pretty
stuff?
sure.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like 3
yeah,
warehouses.
yeah.
You know,
Not
and
that-
he is the market.
yeah, yeah. What I did was I dried up the market a few years ago before the video game hype. I would say back when, like, let's say maybe 2 or 3 years after the video game market crash of like 06, whenever that was, 04, 06, kind of like when the GameCube faded out,
Yeah.
and like Super Smash was like $10, you know, it was bad. So I capitalized, and I was like, well, Resident Evil 2 is my favorite game, so I'm going to buy up every single copy that I can find of Resident Evil 2 and just keep it for myself. Maybe you can call me crazy.
But why did you do that? Was there like just like did you know someday it was going to get hot again?
I did. There was 2 things. One is I was so obsessed by the cover and the aesthetic of stacking jewel cases that that was one thing. But the other thing was, like, I knew as a kid this was going to be a massive thing. With the release of Resident Evil 2 and then Resident Evil 3, and I'm thinking, wow, man, this is something different, you know.
Right.
And then you see the spin-offs coming, you know, like all the popular ones that were catching up, Silent Hill. Then you see the Parasite Eve,
Yeah.
you know, and seeing like, yeah, there's now a genre that's called survival horror, you know.
Yeah.
And also, I think one of the elements that really caught my eye with Resident Evil was the puzzle-based system.
Right.
You know, that was ridiculous, that you had to balance the oil pressure on the bridge in order to get it to function and get the things to balance. That, for me, was awesome. It made me think while I was playing, not only like shooting zombies, but you got to plan ahead of time and
Right.
make sure I got to carry this with me, but I only have 6 spaces, so only the essentials. So it makes you, or save my ammo because I only have this much,
Yeah.
especially if you play like on hard mode. So it was a time when games actually challenged you. You
So
know?
do you think games like, because everything you say just reminds me of the new Zelda games, like the somewhat new Zelda games, like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. There's a lot of that in there. There's a lot of puzzling. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things like that, and there's a lot of, you know, ammo hoarding. You have to make sure that you're not, you know, wasting too many of your arrows or whatever weapons you have, and they're limited and they get destroyed over time. You know, maybe that was the precursor to a lot of that.
Yeah, of course. I would say, I mean, and I'm not sure of this. You know, sometimes my specifics on video game history is not perfect, but I'm sure there was maybe a game back in the day before Resident Evil was a thing, maybe a computer game where it was very similar.
Yeah.
But the one that struck me the most and was impacted and created a genre was, for me at least, the Resident Evil series and how it was. And yeah, the voiceover acting was cheesy, but you know what wasn't back
Right,
then? It was
yeah.
all crap. You
Yeah,
know,
it was the day.
that was
back in the
part of
day.
it. That
Yeah.
made it a little lighthearted. Like, oh yeah, I'm about to get jump scared by the zombie, but the way he sounded on script was like shit. So it kind of balances that feeling out. It's like, okay, this is scary but goofy at the same time.
What's going on in this town?
Yeah, like that stuff. We quote that.
Watch out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I quote it all the time. Like, you know, it's like it's kind of funny at this point.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
So
thanks, bro.
thanks. All right, well, let's go. You know, that kind of reminds me of a few things. Again, talking about Zelda and all that, it reminded me of a second point I wanted to bring out about Nintendo. Not to beat a dead horse,
No,
but
go ahead. Yeah.
you know, what do you think? Does Nintendo have business? Does it have a business cracking down on cartridges? This is another thing. Does Nintendo have any business cracking down on cartridges that are copied and given and sold unsuspectingly to like GameStop or to like independent game stores?
Here's what I think.
Okay.
With their recent crackdown of a lot of ROM sites and how they're so protective of their cartridges, they know that these like third parties, like the Steam Deck, you know, like the Rogue X Ally, all that sort of stuff,
Right.
they know they can take them over. So they're being as protective of their properties as they want to be. Because if they don't have that, then they got nothing.
Yeah.
Because everyone acknowledges it's like why even pick up the Switch?
And
You
that
know?
that reminds me too. I'm glad you brought that up because that reminds me of another point I was going to bring out. Do you think this points to a larger problem with Nintendo running out of content and running out of new ideas? Because we're going to have like Mario Kart 20 soon. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Because now they're trying to be so protective of their older IP because it's become so popular and it's stayed so popular, yet it's so easily duplicated on every other console out there.
I
Just
think
about.
I think at one point, you see sometimes like movies making fun of this. Like, it's gonna be ridiculous to me to see Mario Kart 27.
Right.
I think at one point you could only take so much out of what you created in the beginning. I think the same thing with Resident Evil. I think maybe there will be a stopping point and maybe the spin-offs or something else will be created from it. But I think at one point you do have to put it down. Like you'd be like, okay, you made something great, don't Walking Dead it, as I like to say. Don't do that. That's not good.
Yeah.
Because media fatigue is a lot more relevant now, I feel.
Yeah,
compared to
that's a
anything
good
else.
that's a good point, man. Media fatigue. I like that. Yeah.
We're so oversaturated with
Yeah.
everything constantly. Yeah.
Yeah, everything is available to you all at once, even on like the same system.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, what's the rush at this point?
Right.
Why get into this and that? There's so much to consume.
That's true.
And that's something that I stick by too. Is like I always say, like greatness cannot be rushed. Greatness cannot be hurried. And I feel like these companies are rushing and having these developers, go full steam ahead with these games, and then you're releasing crap.
Yeah.
Because greatness doesn't happen right away. It takes time, and it takes thinking. And I think with all this rushing, get this out as fast as you can because the money needs to hit.
Yeah.
I think that's going to take its toll on the company, and I think that's where Nintendo's headed right now. Is that you're too worried about pushing out the next title and how much that's going to bring in, as opposed to coming up with something original, something new, something that's going to maybe open up a new genre. Whatever that may be.
No, it's true, and it what it reminds me of, because I've thought about this before. Disney Plus, because Nintendo is like, again, the Disney of gaming, and I've said that before, and I don't think I'm alone in thinking that. But with Disney, it's streaming in general to a certain degree is not sustainable. But Disney, I love Disney. We all love things about Disney. Even people that hate Disney love something that's Disney. But at the same time, like with Nintendo, they have a certain market they cater to, and that's their bread and butter. Now, how long will they be able to sustain that? Because people that play Mario Kart aren't only going to want to play Mario Kart. With Disney, people aren't only going to want to watch Disney. They're going to want to watch like something rated PG-13 or R. I'm exaggerating, but at the same time, you're going to want more. And that's what always struck me as like, Disney needs to expand, which they did, thankfully, with Star Wars, with, now they're connected to Hulu and things like that, because Disney on its own, you love it. It's great. It's got a lot of high quality productions, but at the same time, you're just going to get sick of watching Disney because it's a certain market they have to, adhere to. They're expanding more, which I think has saved them on streaming. But with Nintendo, I don't know if I think there's a certain myopathy when it comes to what they can put out and what they want to produce. And more with Nintendo is what they want to give their fans, which is usually not what the fans want the most. They want the old stuff. They want the new stuff. They don't want it on a streaming platform that you have to pay for, per month. I mean, I get it. It's not terribly expensive, but at the same time, you also don't own it, and they can take it away whenever they want. There's just an insecurity with that we've all kind of woken up to and aren't like, we know it's going to happen at some point if they change their mind on something or there's a lawsuit or whatever, and then we're not going to have something we loved on newer formats to play or to use. And that's, or somebody that wants to show their kids something. And that's why the independent cuts of Star Wars were put out and became so famous, because a guy wanted to show his little brother, I think Harmy's collection, some guy who from across the pond wanted to show his little brother Star Wars, but he couldn't find the original cuts because they didn't exist at the time on the current media. So he taught himself to edit, found prints on DVDs, Blu-rays, and Laserdiscs, and edited the perfect original version together. And then, eventually he got a job on Wonder Woman because of that. But he taught himself to edit. Yeah. He didn't know how to do it before that. But see, that drove him. But, and I think that's what's driving a lot of guys to do, or a lot of people, to, turn to ROMs and ROM sites.
Yeah, I think one of the things I noticed that I started to get a little more into is I picked up a modded Vita a while back. and there's an app on there. I forget the name of it. I think it might be Shark Food or one of those apps where it's basically games that are hacked games with amateur developers that added their own skins and did like a Simpsons version of Doom. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Don't have a couch.
I think that's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Is that you're grabbing something that's super nostalgic. You got two entities, and you're bringing them into this world for people to enjoy because companies, the big ones, have been putting out crap. So people want choices. Now, is there a problem with having too many choices? Of course.
Yeah.
I think I'll make a perfect point here with PlayStation Premium or PlayStation Plus, which is the same thing as Xbox. Xbox
the
Game
PlayStation
Pass.
Now?
Game Pass.
Yeah, Game Pass, like the Netflix for games.
Yeah.
I spend more time trying to pick a game than actually playing the game.
And that's kind of the same thing with a lot of movies too.
With streaming.
With streaming.
You'll spend 30 minutes on Netflix before you find something because there's so much out there.
Even physical collections, same thing.
Yeah.
It's
and
a
that's
problem.
the thing. When you have too much of a choice, you start to like, what the hell? Where do I start?
The paradox of choice.
You know?
That's what it is.
It's like when the house is all fucking dirty and where do I start? Like, what do I do? You know, I think that sometimes works against people when you have too much of an option.
Right.
People love options. But when there's too much, you start to confuse the person, and then you can't catch on anything, or you can't play anything, or finish a title all the way through.
Right.
You know, it's like when people show up at the shop and they're like, "Oh, have you seen this show? Have you seen that show?" Dude, I mean,
a million shows.
I'm still working on True Blood, which came out years ago.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so
Same, yeah.
which was I think a great show for the first season, and after that it kind of went a little wild, but
True
awesome
Blood.
Awesome show. First season of True Blood blew my mind. And I wasn't a big vampire guy, you know, like those. Sorry if I ruined it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet or has been living under a rock.
Right.
But it
Under
is a
another
great
rock.
show. I do recommend it. Just the first season.
Right. Then just
Just the
stop
first
watching.
season.
Just stop watching.
Like The Walking Dead. After
Yeah.
episode 6, you're done.
Yeah,
Right.
for real.
Yeah.
Man.
Make your own story at
Like,
that point.
Jesus.
So here's a blunt question. So do you think gamers have a right to rip their own games and then sell the originals?
You have the right to do whatever the fuck you want with the game that you spend your hard-earned money on. And I'll tell you that right now. I've always been a person that stood by that. You bought it. You sweated for it. You woke up early to go to work. You can do whatever you want with it.
Right.
Plain and simple. That's just how if I bought it with my money, I own it. This is why I'm so against digital media with digital systems. Working at a video game shop, do digital consoles sell for us?
Heck no.
They never do.
No.
They
can't sell it.
never. Nobody wants it anymore. It's pointless. And plus, you're telling me that if you lose the license because of your shitty negotiations, then I'm asked out.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm gonna forever physical media, no matter what. You can try to just blow smoke up my ass by telling me what it does, but it's not gonna work.
Yeah, how much more convenient it is. And
Yeah.
So what?
If you're telling me that if it's digital, I own it forever, guaranteed, maybe.
Yeah.
But physical, man.
Yeah.
All the way.
Plus the eye-pleasing aesthetic. I remember we had this conversation before. This is why I love Sega Saturn so much. Sega Saturn cases, they're like beefed up jewel cases for CDs. They're
They
like
are.
it's when you have them, like you have your setup here. It is the most beautiful thing to see Sega Saturn.
It's unlike anything else.
Yeah,
That's
man,
true.
and that's part of the collection process. You know, some people just like the aesthetic of how things look.
Yeah.
You know, I walk by my display case every morning, and I look at it and then continue on with my life. But what that is for me, and I'm sure some collectors can relate, and if it's something different, it's okay. But for me, at least, it's just a quick reminder of this hectic life that we live, that it's just a little memory, a little slingshot memory of back when the times were good, when you were a kid
Yeah.
and you didn't have to worry about shit. The good times, you know, like Peter Pan when he says think happy memories and you'll fly and all this stuff. It's kind of like the same thing. It's a little dopamine rush that you get, you know, before you take your sip of your coffee and be like, you know, I gotta drive to my miserable fucking job that I hate and all
Well,
this
it's
stuff.
not miserable.
Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
for
Not the
some
game
people.
shop.
Not the
Not
game
for
shop.
some,
Dude. This
yeah.
is working in a game shop is awesome. I don't care what anybody says. You know, this is you know, as you know, we get people on the daily asking, hey, are you guys hiring? Like
Seriously.
all walks of life, male, female, tall, short, old, young, it doesn't matter.
Decepticon Autobot.
Yeah, seriously, like you know,
Whatever
dudes with
side of
bionic
the-
arms. He's
yeah.
like, you know, like When you said Decepticons, I was like,
But the bionic arm's a weird thing.
don't get me started on Transformers now.
We'll be here for 10 weeks.
But that's the interesting thing too, and I said this about the shop, and that's why I think they're so good for communities, comic shops and little places, newsstands. How they used to have newsstands even in the malls and stuff. Why they're good, because they're a place where it brings communities together, and gaming specifically. And I've said this in a previous episode. Gaming specifically brings together everybody, any age. It doesn't matter, because generations find old games all the time. It doesn't matter. They're perennials. Even if they suck, they're still going to have people looking for them. You guys sell them. We sell them. I mean, you guys sell them all the time. And, you know, it brings in people with autism, people who have special needs, and there's something so comforting about a place like that. And it's weird. When I walked in the first time, I thought the same thing, because at first you're like, oh, there's a cool little spot, a lot of stuff. But the more you're there, the more people watch, and you see people come in, and it's amazing how sometimes people that don't have any other community have that. And it's really great. It's not just playing games. That's a big part of it. But everybody plays games. Everybody. And it's kind of inspiring to see. You're like, oh, this is pretty cool. You know, it's a community service in a way. This town would be so, this town in LA, in Southern California, would be so much less exciting. It would be so much more dull without the shop.
You have no idea how many times we have people, some of the more common comments that we get is, one of the best ones that I like is like, oh shit, I had this when I was a kid. And oh my God, I had that, I had this. And then we get people that say, dude, thank you for being here. Like, thank you for just being here. And even though maybe I might have not bought something that day, thank you for the happy memory that I was able to share with my kid and tell him, hey, I had that. And your kid's like, wow, Dad, that's cool. Like, you can call it cheesy, but for me, that's another dopamine rush that's just like, wow, man, hell yeah.
Well, we've seen that. We have those stories too.
I've
said that. I've seen guys come in tough, tough dudes, big, like from the hood, and just like, tough vatos, right? They come in and all of a sudden they see something when they were a kid and they turn into a 6-year-old.
You see that transformation happen in real time.
They just
so
look
exciting,
pissed, like they're ready to fight anybody, and then they see that one thing, whatever it is, Pokemon game, and they just melt and they become those kids, and it's fascinating, but it's heartwarming as well. Yeah, it's really, it's places like that are very special. Not GameStop. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, we're not here to throw shade.
I'm just kidding. The people that work at GameShop are some great people. I'm sorry, the people that work at GameStop. The people that work at GameStop are amazing people. Just GameStop as a company and what it offers people is just terrible. But no, and I think now it's a good time to switch over to our second topic, because I wanted you here specifically for this because you work on these, and we mentioned it earlier, and that is the SEGA Nomad.
Oh, man.
This was a system that would play full-size SEGA cartridges in your hands. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't like the Game Gear where you had Game Gear versions of the games. These were full 16-bit cartridges that you would play on your Master System or your Mega Drive. The Mega Drive, not the Master System ones, right? Did they take both?
No, maybe there was I think there was an adapter for the first model Genesis. I don't remember there being a Sega Master adapter for the Nomad.
Gotcha.
But don't quote me on that because I never jumped on that.
Right.
That
but the Nomad for sure played the Sega Genesis cartridges.
Yeah.
And that was so revolutionary because years later you had things called the Super Boys.
Yeah.
And they would play SNES cartridges, but those were independent. Those weren't actually made by Nintendo.
Exactly.
These were third party.
Yeah.
And they were cool because that didn't exist then. And it was at a time where emulation was kind of, I would say compared to now, it was in its infancy.
It definitely was.
But the Nomad was just revolutionary, and unfortunately, it didn't do well.
No. Maybe, I don't know what the factors were with the Nomad as to why it didn't do well in the market. Maybe it was on the downfall of Sega, and there was other things coming out.
I mean, I would assume it's because a lot of people wouldn't want to play the same games they've already played at home.
I think that could have been one of the factors. I just thought the Sega Nomad was so ahead of its time with what you were able to do with it, which is full-size carts, definitely. I'm pretty sure there maybe was an adapter where you can put your Sega Master games. If they did it for the Model Genesis 1, which was called, I think, the Power Base, I don't see why not. But the thing that really blew my mind was the fact that you were able to plug that into your TV. It was basically dockable in a way, but tethered. Where you had, RCA input for it, and
Right,
you were allowed to
right.
do that, and the image was pretty good on the TV either way because it was CRT.
Right. And you can hook handheld controllers in it to it,
It
right?
had the little port at the bottom,
That's
so
amazing.
kind of like a Superboy, I would
Yeah.
say, like the Superboy, but
Like 10, 15 years before.
way ahead of its
Yeah.
time, man. And yeah, did it have battery issues a little bit like the Game Gear? Obviously lithium-ion batteries weren't a thing. It was just straight up Duracell Energizer was the market, not a
Yeah.
special battery out yet. But I have a huge love for the Nomad and the Game Gear. The Game Gear also
Yeah.
was just a great handheld.
Well, with the Nomad, the problem with them now, because they're so old, is that you just have to swap out the, what do you have to fix? The internals.
Well, the main
caps.
issue, the caps were a problem with the Game Gear.
Right.
And they were electrolytic capacitors, as opposed to like the new ones where they are ceramic, way better, longer shelf life. But it was also a reason of rush production to compete with the monster at that point, which was the Game Boy, the original DMG Game Boy.
Yeah.
I think the original DMG Game Boy was 89, 90,
89.
89.
89, yeah.
And then that one, the Game Gear, was almost like a year later, I
Yeah.
think.
91,
91.
92, around there.
Yeah, like Ty said, they had their own individual carts. A lot of the games were Sega ports, just made for the Game Gear, like Streets of Rage and
Right.
Ninja Gaiden, Shinobi. All that stuff was on Sega that was on Game Gear. But again, when you try to rush greatness, you have issues. And I think Game Gear was a great handheld, but was just a victim of rush production to compete with the monster that was slowly starting to explode, which was the Nintendo.
Yeah.
Game Boy. And if, compare the specs. You got a Game Boy, which is just a green screen, kind of like Nokia,
Yeah.
which you had to
Yeah.
play in the light. Yeah, the battery life was on. The games were great. That was the thing I think that
Yeah.
propelled it, was just the choice of games.
Every Game Boy game with Tetris.
Yeah.
Tetris is like a game changer.
Tetris, the Mario, the Donkey
Kong.
Kongs, they ported all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think Game Gear tried the best that they could against the monster. It was like a David versus Goliath type of thing. And I think, there was issues with the Game Gear, but the attachments that Game Gear had, you can watch TV on it, which was wild.
Yeah.
That was the other cool thing with the Game Gear, were the attachments, man.
Yeah.
I remember having that attachment, tuning in the radio and trying to like get that TV signal back when cable or the signal was still open.
Yeah.
I believe, the Game Gear did have a Sega Master attachment.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a trip.
It did have the Sega Master attachment. Yep.
They were so far ahead when it came to that, and it's unfortunate that they did not do well. They didn't sell well. I mean, because they were
Yeah.
better, but the biggest problem was the battery life. It would last you 2 hours on 6 AA
Yeah, man. And that's another thing too.
on
is
the
like,
Game Gear.
Yeah, and they had a charger battery pack for it, but it's still, I think it was because it was like a mini fluorescent bulb that was on the inside of it, from what I remember.
Yeah.
I've never really opened up that little metal piece that's there, but from what I read, it's like literally like a little fluorescent bulb that's in it, the backlight for it.
Wow.
And I love working on them though. I think it's so much fun just getting a system that doesn't work and just being able to fix the issue that they had from the manufacturer and bringing it back to life. I think
Right.
that's a crazy feeling. But yeah, I think it's market conditions and Nintendo was still a powerhouse, and just the amount of games that you had
Yeah.
available on the DMG Game Boy, and I'm not gonna lie, they were good games.
They were.
You got Super Contra on there, you got Dracula. The music was still cool, even though
Yeah.
it sounded like less than what was it, like 4 bits, 5 bits, whatever it was. But
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
whatever it was, that was amazing.
Yeah,
And I
it's-
think tying it back to what you guys said prior about oversaturation and like overproducing, like how you said earlier, what were you saying about like too much going out without like care?
Oh, you can't rush quality.
You can't rush
Yeah.
quality.
You can't rush
the thing
greatness.
is, with Sega, I mean, they pumped out consoles like what every few years.
in the 90s.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, they were
lost
again, they were
confidence from the public.
competing with Nintendo, which
Yeah.
was this behemoth of a company who had this mascot, a fat Italian plumber with a mustache, which you're like, well, that's not appealing, but the story behind it was great,
Yeah.
And then, did Sonic give him a run for his money? Hell
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
I I collect Nintendo Mario memorabilia because it was my childhood, and so was Nintendo.
Sega and Nintendo.
I'm sorry, Sega, but you know, there's something about Sonic, dude, that just is some cool shit, man.
Yeah.
And I remember reading somewhere where Sega appealed to the teenager as opposed to the little kid, and you know, that was their market.
There was a
the edge,
rebellious
cool,
edge
yeah.
to
Yeah.
their marketing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great, and having this blue guy that was super fast. He had an attitude, spoke with flavor, and had spikes on his back, and it's just it's a cool mascot.
You
man.
guys remember Sega does when Nintendo
don't.
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dude,
exactly.
that's-
That's
that
a
was-
bold line, dude.
Yeah.
That was wild.
And
That-
Nintendo tried to fight back. I was watching an ad recently, and like something about like, oh, Nintendo's got this. What does Sega have? And they showed a TV, a CRT with a Sega setup. Nothing, and they go back, but it still didn't beat what Sega was doing to them.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they really ate into their profits. Because Genesis was doing really good, but then Super NES came out,
Yeah.
and that kind of wrecked it for them.
Oh man, Super NES was wild.
Super
I
Mario
remember.
World, basically Super Mario
Was
Bros.
an
4,
amazing game,
was a
dude.
juggernaut.
Metroid, Link
man.
to the
Metroid,
Past,
Metroid,
you know?
yeah,
Thank
dude,
you.
Metroid.
They went hard with their
Yoshi's
titles.
Island.
Yoshi's Island.
Something that a lot of friends from the Spanish world, from like, and stuff I was hearing from cousins, we want better sports games that we didn't get that many on Nintendo because Nintendo was only able to do so much. FIFA on Sega was revolutionary. You know, FIFA that you play now on PlayStation, I think, started off on Sega, and it's what a lot of people wanted in sports games. And then Madden, the whole Madden franchise, you know what that did. And I was a fan of soccer, but when I played Super Nintendos and I played International Superstar Soccer Deluxe, and then I found out how big this game was in South American countries, I think that's also what helped propel Super Nintendo, were the sports games that came out for it, and the graphics and what you were able to do. You know, and I think also with Nintendo, so for me, you may be able to relate to this. For me, a big deal in a video game, if we're going off topic, is its soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
You know, it carries the video game. I mean, you can have an okay game, and the soundtrack is monstrous. You're gonna have a great game.
Look at what is Sonic?
Yeah.
Do you ever go back to listen to like some of the Sonic
Oh my
2
God.
Sonic
Still
music?
do. We play at the
Yeah,
shop. 'Cause
exactly.
It's fantastic.
I
It's
do the
really
Running
good.
Man to some of the music. You're able to do it
Right.
on beat, and I talk about Streets of Rage all the time.
Oh, yes. Even now for
Fantastic
the fourth one, Streets of Rage 4 had an amazing soundtrack.
you
They
know,
carried that over.
I think there are very few soundtracks that can rival, if any. And maybe I am being a little biased because of my love for Streets of Rage, but you know, what you were able to do with a limited amount of sounds, and you were able to put out what you want to call maybe techno music
Right.
from the 90s,
Right.
and be able to make it sound like that for a game like Streets of Rage. Like, could you imagine Streets of Rage having any other type of soundtrack
No
but that?
way.
No
You
way.
can't- It's so in its it's so
it's the
like tied into
yeah,
it.
and that's
it's a
what's
character in the game.
That's
Yeah.
why I admire so much about Sega.
Yeah.
Is they focused on a lot of things. Remember, the Model 1 had the
Volume.
the volume with
Yeah.
that was ridiculous.
What, so
dude.
wait, let's see. It had a volume rocker, right?
Yeah, with
Yeah.
your aux cord for your headphones.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's right. It did
because
have that.
yeah, because if you're playing
I
at
forgot
night,
about
you know,
that.
you're playing at night, and your TV can only go so loud. You know, you don't want to play a game on a low volume while your parents are sleeping.
Right.
You want to be able to play that shit loud.
Now I got back into listening to I got back into listening to Sonic soundtracks.
Yeah.
Because there's a guy, is it Mike O? I think on TikTok, and he was like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but, and then he'd stop, and then you'd have music from a video game, Contra.
I follow him.
Dude,
yeah.
me too. And he did one of the ones from Sonic, and
Mystic Cave.
yeah, Mystic Cave, but he did another one. Dun, 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 dun. I forget.
Casino. No, that is
No, not the casino one. He did that.
Scrapyard Zone.
I think so.
Speedway?
Scrapyard.
It's one of. I think it's
Yeah,
that. But
it's like one of
such
the
a-
last level, the third to last level on the first one.
It's like such a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's such a, and the guy that did, I can't remember his name right now, but in the chat, I mean in the comments, if you guys know his name, please throw it up. He's a legend, and he would talk about how difficult it was to work with such a limited range of sounds
Yeah.
to make that kind of music. But it was legendary, and it was just really, really good. And to this day, it's even better now when you're an adult, because when you listen to it separately, you see how great it is. In a game, you don't pay
Yes.
as much attention to it,
Yeah.
like a movie soundtrack.
yeah.
But
yeah, because you're busy trying to beat the game.
right, and
you know,
survive
you're trying to survive.
Because Sonic, you would die, and then they'd make you go all the way to the back to the beginning. You
Yeah.
have to play the whole game through again.
And you just hear the song over and
Right,
over.
I
Yeah.
know, yeah, exactly. You'd have to play levels so much sometimes. They're in you somehow.
And I'm actually glad
forever.
whoever decided to release
yeah.
these soundtracks on vinyl.
Yeah, oh, dude.
Thank you, whoever.
Yeah, on
did that.
CD.
Yeah.
They're on CD too.
Yeah.
CD, vinyl, digital. But no, the physical stuff is really great. The vinyl, like, yeah, man, they know. Streets of Rage 4 on vinyl, so good.
I haven't picked that one up yet. I'm trying to get the first and the second one, but I know they're pricey.
Yeah, they go out of print so fast because there's such
yeah.
limited print runs. Because
Yeah.
we're a very specific audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Like for me, I haven't been able to get my hands on the Silent Hill soundtrack. That's the one I really want to get.
Right.
Because for me, I really appreciate the music and the sounds there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of sampling done, and some of them even share like samples with other artists, and I think that's really interesting.
It's always good to get them quick too, because again, licensing, the rights kind of change
Ooh,
hands,
true.
or they run out and they can't like reissue them, and then
Now it's
eBay
trickier with like
scalpers.
remakes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you have like the original soundtrack, which is still being released, but then you have like the remake soundtrack being released.
Yeah.
You know, it's separate, but it's like, are they going to discontinue the original
Yeah.
and then go on from there? Just start. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Of course.
Thanks. And then start just continuously printing the.
Okay,
That's weird.
What is that?
I don't know.
There's some kind of looping issue.
Maybe.
Sorry, guys.
Technical difficulties, folks.
Right?
Happens
Yeah.
all the time.
Right. I swear this is the first time.
It really is. It's strange.
This has never happened before.
It hasn't.
Odd.
You bring a strange energy to yourself, Pablo.
It happens to podcasters of a certain age, I hear.
A certain age, yeah. Just can't get it up, as we say.
Hey, okay. I was trying to be subtle.
Subtle.
Got him.
Damn.
Mine's super subtle.
Does this pick you up and like, can I just throw you across the room? Like?
You could.
Just remember to use the wrist straps.
Careful.
But no, the music in games are played. They're a real like silent hero when it comes to a lot of the games we played as kids, and we see it now.
Yeah.
There's so many different components to movies and games and entertainment that we just don't pay attention to. And I think gaming soundtracks have really not been paid that much attention to, besides hardcore gamers who love
Yeah.
something so much.
Yeah, man.
which is
I think
awesome.
The tracks are ridiculous. I've been on a little kick of picking them up when I can.
Yeah.
I picked up the Splatterhouse one at a toy show. I picked up the Resident Evil 1 release soundtrack with the character interactions.
Oh yeah.
So
Watch
you
out.
can, yeah. Don't open that door,
That is, I
Going
know.
on in this
dude.
town?
It is. It's like just cool when I'm working on stuff. I got it playing in the background.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
gotta
that's
get into
awesome,
the-
man.
get
the
the
music
vibe
that
going.
plays when you enter the mansion in the first one.
Yeah,
and
dude,
stuff
it's
like
so
that.
good. I love it.
So, you know-
kudos to the people that came up with that, man.
Yeah, a lot of hard work, unsung heroes.
Yeah, yeah,
for sure.
I would
But
say so.
now, with your history with gaming, I want to get into that for our third and final segment. I want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about how modding, and I talk about modding a lot because it's just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I have modded consoles, and my favorite handheld modded is, of course, the 3DS XL, the new 3DS XL, because they had a great lineup, a lot of great games, and
Yeah.
you can play a lot of the classic original games, a lot of the original Mario ports, because they did a lot of digital ports over the years. So, that can have like all your Nintendo favorites in it.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
it's amazing. But with you personally, you grew up or your family grew up in Chile.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd like you to talk a little bit about, your uncle and how
Yeah, dude.
you got into fixing and modding consoles.
It kind of, so he kind of pushed the gaming part of it over onto me, if you would, and so he's my mom's cousin,
Right.
Which we would technically call him an uncle.
Okay.
You just generally call him
Less
Theo.
confusing over
Yeah,
time.
it was just a deal. It was like whatever. You're
He's
part
my
of the
second
family.
cousin, twice removed. Yeah.
It's just like, okay, deal, whatever.
Yeah.
Even if you're friendly with your neighbor, the kids call the elder mom in the house next door. Even though you're not related, out of respect, you call her Tia. A family friend that's close to the family, you always call him Tio or Tia. But this was an actual family member. He was just my dad's or my mom's cousin.
Right.
And he was a PS1 modder. And what he did was the chip mod, which in the 90s, when PlayStation 2 came out in Chile, PlayStation 1 was still massively popular. And the reason was Chile, was for the most part, a impoverished country back then. Never, I don't think they were third world, but they were, you had more poor people than rich people. It's just how it was. And games, the original copy games, which here, when PS2 came out, those games were dollars. Like PS1 games were a couple bucks, I think, and I think in Chile at that point, when PS2 was even out in Chile, the PS1 games were still $50 to $60. People in poor areas couldn't afford those games.
Yeah.
It's too much money. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So what he did was he would do the chip mod, which you would solder one cable to the board and then to the chip, and then on the other side of the chip you do one cable and then to the CD drive, and that allows the PS1 to read CDRs. So that's what he was doing. He was just modding people's PlayStations. He would buy the original copy, and he would just burn copies and just sell them.
Right.
So one day I saw him do that, and I was like, "You need to show me how to do this. I need to learn." But before that, I was always taking things apart as a kid. Like, it was a wild story. I would take my toys and throw them in the middle of the road, and then wait for a car to drive by and smash it.
Oh, wow.
And then I'd go and recover it and see if I can put it back together. Whether it was gluing the plastic back together or observing the internal components, if it was like a RC car. Wild way I got into it, but I was always intrigued by, and people are just like, you could have just opened it up with a screwdriver,
What's the fun in that?
But I was like 5 when I started to do that. When I would like smash my toys open, or I was always curious as what the hell is inside of this thing.
Right.
Is there like a little dude making it move? Like I didn't know. I was a kid,
Right,
What's inside the little dude?
Oh, God.
So I've always
You didn't
had
have any
this-
pets as a
this-
kid,
no,
did you? No,
no.
I'm kidding.
Well, he had some.
There was this ferret. That,
A lot of cats
so I was
went
always
missing.
curious with basically how things worked internally, and so fast forward to that, I was never really intimidated by opening stuff up because I kind of knew over time. I was confident in that I can put it back together.
Right.
But he taught me how to do that, and when I came back home, I was in Chile for a month. When I would go on vacation, it was mainly because when I was in a private high school and we followed college schedule. So our Christmas breaks were a month, like a college. We got out in May.
Well, because you grew up in New York.
I grew up in Connecticut.
Connecticut, right.
Connecticut, yeah. And I went to a private, a college preparatory high school. And there, they followed the school schedule from UNH, which is the University of New Haven. So we had the same days off as the college students. A month off in December, a full 3 months off in
He just randomly starts
I don't
laughing.
know, yeah. It's just like, tell me the joke.
It's nothing. Just continue speaking. That's why I turn away.
This is staying in this time. I'm not cutting any more
We'll
of
keep
this
this
out.
in here, and then I'll grill him on it later.
So, so college prep,
Yeah,
you'd go for a month.
So I go for a month. So I told him, listen, dude, teach me what you can.
Seriously, I don't know what's going on, folks.
You
Yeah.
keep talking. I'll turn away.
People can still hear you in the mic.
Yeah.
People
What
are
do you-
paying good money for this.
Tell me what
I've
you're
told you that
giggling
before.
about. Like, I need to know now.
He had one beer, folks. One beer.
That's all it takes. Just one
Hey,
Pacifico.
It's a cheap date.
There was lime in it.
There was lime in it. What was in that lime?
The acidity increases the drunkenness.
The zest.
So, all right, so you
So-
go for a month. Jesus.
Okay.
You,
I have
is
issues.
it going for a month? Like, is that what
No, it's
going?
not even that.
Okay.
I'm thinking things
So
to myself.
it's
Yeah,
So
I
you would
can
go
tell.
down. You would vacation for a
Yeah, I
month in
vacationed
Chile.
down there, and then I was like, listen.
This is gonna go on forever, dude.
I gotta let it out, man. You gotta.
Well, it sounds like it's just a laugh.
Let's give him a few minutes. Let's give him a couple seconds.
Oh God,
Dr. Giggles over here.
it's a 2-hour podcast now.
2 hours. That's it.
Oh, shit.
People are getting what they want.
Is this what you want? Go ahead and comment down below.
Yes. Yes.
Here, you got some right there.
What do I
Right.
have?
I don't know.
Your t-shirt.
Oh, my t-shirt. Okay, I'll take it off.
We good?
50% off.
Oh, God.
I can see where you brought the beer.
Please keep that 100% on.
Okay. Fine. Show you my Taco Bell tattoo.
Oh God. tramp stamp.
Next segment.
Let's go. Okay.
So yeah, okay. So I was there, and he taught me how to do the soldering. I had a PS1, and I was like, let me try it on mine. If it breaks, it breaks. So yeah, so I learned how to mod soldering mod, so hardware modding on the PS1, which, you know, to be honest, even with the PS2 out, I was still playing my PS1.
Right.
So yeah, I learned how to do that mod, and then I started modding my own stuff, and then burning my own copies. I kind of, you know, we had a computer. We were fortunate enough to have, I think it was like an Acer. Or the Gateway one where you press like a turbo button, but it really didn't do much.
Right. It just made a sound.
It just made a sound. It didn't really do anything. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. So I got into that, and I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like I can play burned games, you know.
Yeah.
So I would start buying games for cheap. At that time, it was Funkoland. That was the video game store on the East Coast. I think GameStop ended up buying them out down the road. But Funkoland was the shit, man. Another great video game store. But I would just buy the games there, burn them, and then my friends would be like, hey, dude, can you do that to my PS1? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Why not? And then that's how I kind of like started modding consoles.
Right.
And then just researching on the early days of YouTube of how to mod like PS2s. And this was like after the PS2 wave, where I kind of caught onto the PS2 mod. PS3 was more like jailbreaking at that point, other than hardware modding.
Yeah.
So it got a little, you know, a little more dodgy there because I wasn't good at jailbreaking mods at that point. I was more of a hardware guy.
It's more about code. And
Yeah,
just,
that's what I figured. So I was just like, all right, cool, but I'll still try.
Right.
So yeah, I tried modding certain consoles and then handhelds, but it was hardware mods as in like switching out the LED light, you know, stuff like that, putting a better speaker before better speaker options were available. So I pulled the speaker from like headsets and put them into the DMG. And sometimes, but you got to be careful. Obviously, it's different voltage and what they call the ohms or whatever it is. So you got to find the right ones. But it worked. Yeah. You know, my soldering pen was the shit, man. And I thank my mom for that. She bought me like the soldering station and made this little office for me to do my thing. And you know, I'm very thankful because she kind of encouraged it in a way. She's like, yeah, if he likes it, let him do it. You know, why not? You know.
So how well did your uncle do in Chile?
So he did very well, man.
Just on PS1.
Oh God! So we went to go visit his house in a city up north from Santiago, which is more towards the desert, a city called Limache. And I was like, damn, Theo, like, he's like, yeah, this is the house that PlayStation built. And I was like, holy shit! It was a beautiful home. Yeah. You know, it was like I mean, it wasn't a mansion, but in Chile that was a big deal. A pool in the back, nice big plot of land. So he did very well for himself. Yeah. With modding, you know, and he took me to his basement, and there was just stacks. Whoa, okay. He's like,
not like that.
He took me to the basement and it said, put the lotion on your skin.
You were thinking it though.
Would you do me?
I do me. No, yeah, and it's funny because you know you told me before too, and we've had this conversation that you'd go into game shops in Chile and there wouldn't be an authentic game there.
No, it was all CDR burned games.
These were just all burnt, like wall-to-wall burned games.
The burned game would be 5,000 pesos, which they would photocopy the front cover of the manual to put it on the CDR jewel case, so you had like a little cover. Yeah. Obviously, it wasn't the greatest printing quality, but you had it, you know. 5,000 pesos, which I think was like $3, $4 at the time.
And that bought him a nice house in Chile.
Yeah, it was wild. And he was like, yeah, I bought this by modding PlayStation. I was so impressed that he was able to support a family. He had like 2 or 3 daughters.
And he stopped doing it when the PS2 came out. Like he sold and did other things,
right?
And
I think the technology did catch up with him for a little bit. But you know what? He was able to save money, and he became a chef and opened up an Italian restaurant.
Wow. So he was modding Italian food too.
Yeah, I guess so. He's putting modchips in the lasagna and making copies of it.
Does it taste Italian? I know. Does it taste real?
What's going on with my food?
That's amazing. And do you think, that's the interesting thing too, because otherwise those kids, the poor kids in Chile, would never have played these games.
No way.
Would never, and here's the thing about democratizing gaming and how that's probably a net good. I would say because those kids grew up playing PlayStation 1 games, so when they got older, made their own money, maybe the economy got better, or they moved out to another country, they continue playing games.
Yeah.
And I think it's legit games after a while. So, I mean, even though, that's why with Nintendo, I think they're so short-sighted, is generations that grow up playing their games in any which way, it's going to make that generation or those generations want to keep playing and keep them tied into the product. And you always want to, once you have the money, you want to be legit. You don't want to have to necessarily do that unless you're like an anarchist. But for the most part, we all want like the quality games, the quality copies of something. We want the authentic thing.
Of course, man. I mean, if your only option is to buy a CDR game because of your financial situation and your economic condition and socioeconomic conditions, if you want to call them, and that's all you can afford, then I'll take it.
Yeah.
I don't care. But yeah, if you do have the money to buy the original copy and you want to have the book art and the manual and stuff like that,
yeah,
hell yeah. Like I love having original copies of something. Obviously, if I have
Resident Evil.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
All the original copies.
There's nothing more satisfying to me than a game with
Yeah.
a good manual.
Yeah.
And with
booklets.
Nintendo, we're seeing less and less of it today. We're seeing games with no manual, no insert, nothing. I mean,
We're seeing like game boxes without even cartridges in them, just codes.
It's
Yeah.
wild. Like
Yeah.
I was thinking about this
It's
the other
true.
day. I was like, I tip my hat off to what Sony did with the first PlayStation. And the one that stuck out to me is when they released Gran Turismo.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if it was I don't remember if it was Gran Turismo 1 or 2, but one of those games had the manual that showed you what certain things meant. Just a general manual, and then an instruction manual on driving.
I think that was
About the
two.
physics of driving.
I think it was
Yeah,
two
it was
that-
two.
yeah, I think
And that's incredible.
Yeah.
Where is that?
I think that kind of ended with the 3DS games, or the DS games, because they didn't have booklets anymore.
Yeah.
Well, DS had some. I think
I
it was
remember
more
yeah.
so like 3DS, but then PS3 they started getting slimmer. Even with 360, it was just like a few pamphlets. And
Well, I
that's
think
it.
3DS, I used to buy the 3DS
Yeah.
games. They never came with a
No,
booklet.
and I think that's where that era of like after PS3, because I remember 360 did have it, PS3 did have it for the most part.
But 360 did have they were just like fold out pamphlets.
Yeah,
They
some
weren't
of them are just
some
like,
of them were
oh,
just
hey,
notebooks.
here's like-
toward the
the
end.
Here's
like-
like
towards the
Xbox
end.
Live for like 3 weeks or something.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah. And I think they were like, let's save a little bit and stuff like that. But then that's another conversation where people talk about where, well, you're telling me that games back in the 90s were $70-$80.
Yeah.
But you're comparing that because of the cost of the material.
Right.
You have a cardboard box and the insert on the inside, and you have the chips on the board, the gold contacts. Of course it's going to be $70. But now you got a game that's 80, where you're saying that you're using thinner plastic because you're trying to save on recycling, no insert, no manual, and this little tiny cart, and you're charging $80-$100.
Right.
That doesn't make sense. I know things are more expensive now than they were back then. I get that.
Well, what about discs? Discs don't have those same excuses because they didn't have the gold in them.
Yeah.
They're just plastic.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think what's going to happen now, I think a big, indicator of where games are going, which I think it's already started with the Switch 2, is the release of GTA 6. There's rumors swirling around that it's going to be 100 plus, and I get it. You spent billions of dollars on this game in the development.
What, like $2 billion?
But yet again,
they've
is
spent?
that
So
is
far.
that kind of my problem? Not really.
Right.
I'm not here to manage your finances, but you're somehow trying to manage mine by telling me that I'm gonna have to pay this much.
Right.
I think that's kind of like, I think one of the comments that kind of pissed me off, one of the execs of Nintendo recently was, somebody asked, what are the younger generation that can't afford your Mario games gonna do? And the dude said, you're gonna have to find Mario or enjoy Mario on another platform for now.
Yeah.
I think that kind of set the precedent of where Nintendo was going. And when you have shareholders that want to turn a profit as quick as possible, which I think is a very toxic way of pushing a company either way, I think you're gonna run into problems.
I think you're right, and I remember them saying something along the lines of, well, what if people can't afford the Switch 2? And they go, well, that's why the Switch 1 is there. You know what that reminded me of? Was Xbox. Because when the Xbox One came out, they're like, well, what about the price and all that? And they go, like, that's why the 360 is there. And then the Xbox One failed
But you're
hard.
shutting down support for the 360.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it interesting though? Because isn't it going around that they're going to increase the price of the Switch 1 now? Like, isn't that what they're doing?
Well, they've already increased the price of the Series X, and
For no reason?
They're calling it. They're saying it's on tariffs, but that was something that was announced before
the tariffs.
Before the
Yeah.
tariffs, that they were going to raise the price. It was already in the plan because, when you have shareholders, this is the problem. When you become a public company, you have shareholders that invest money in your company. They want to turn a profit as quick as possible because I'm an investor, and that's how it works. Yes and no, because when it comes to quality, then you wait for the investment to come back. But investors are short-minded and they want fast.
Right now.
Kind of like the games.
Yeah.
We want them fast.
But not gonna
we
be
don't
good.
care if we'll shoot out 50 games are going to out of 50 games 30 are shit. We don't care. They're out fast.
Your impersonation of a shareholder is exactly the way I see them in my head.
Yeah,
So that's exactly the way
how
they
it
sound.
is. They want their money now, and I get it. It's part of the toxic culture that they've created, that they were taught because they weren't born like that. They just had a what do you call it? A bad what do you call it when you have somebody like a protege, somebody that taught them the wrong way,
Like an influence.
like an influence
bad
on
influence,
it. In some cases maybe there is a fast turnaround, but when it comes to gaming,
That can't be the regular.
if you're gonna put out a great title, like let's say GTA 6 is supposed to be this amazing title in development for years, this thing better be the cream. This thing better be amazing, because if you're telling me you spent billions in all these years and you put out crap, then the industry's in serious trouble.
Yeah,
it's
that's
a
true.
huge indicator of where it's headed.
I mean, I feel like there's a different side to it too, because I feel like with a game like GTA 6, it's never gonna meet expectations.
Right. No.
Because it's been so long. It's been
Well, yeah.
like
That's a
13 years
problem,
at
too.
this point. You know?
Yeah, I think that's something too, where the date is just too far gone.
I think it. No matter how amazing it is, it's still just going to be good
Yeah.
because of
I think so.
expectations. But at
I
least
think
it'll
so.
be good.
I think there's
hopefully.
hype. There's hype behind games now. Social media hype.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 9 got huge, like crowd pleasing, like you know,
Yeah.
support, because it's like Resident Evil 9. You know?
It's hype too. We're living in a different era where one person that has a following can say, "Hey, this is cool," and then everybody's gonna jump on it. Kind of like us at the shop when we have all of a sudden we have an uptick in Nintendogs.
uptick
Yeah,
in
right.
Wii Sports.
In Wii Sports,
Right.
Pokemon,
some
stuff like
TikToker
that.
posted somewhere that I'm taking out my DS out of my closet. Oh my God, what a child! You ever tell there's like this monotone,
Yeah.
those,
I found
those seem,
my 3DS.
and not
in
to
my
make fun, but
closet.
those seem to be the most popular ones, and people jump on that, and then we get this huge wave of people asking, "Hey, where's Animal Crossing?" Because so and so, Boo Boo Kitty Fuck from TikTok said it was cool. Whatever their clan tag is, this is a cool game.
Yeah.
How'd you find my account?
Stop saying it's cool.
It's very cool. Everyone in the comments will say
And
so.
yes, I think there's different market conditions that are happening where games are evolving, but I still think there's a massive problem in the industry, and that's people pushing out quantity
Over quality.
over quality. And every industry there's a drawback to that. It never ends well. It just doesn't.
And I think, unfortunately, Nintendo has a problem with that right now, because usually they put out pretty good stuff, but they put out a lot of filler too.
Yeah.
Because the Switch 1 does have about 11,000, almost 12,000 titles.
Isn't it 16?
Is it closer to 16 now?
16,000, I think it was, yeah.
So many reports, so many
There
of
are
them are different.
16,000 titles on the
I
Switch.
think it was
I
closer.
believe
I think
so,
it was
yeah.
closer to 12. We'll check. But yeah, there's so many games that you'll never be able to play all those.
That's more than PS2, and PS2 had like a 14-year lifespan.
Yeah. And here's
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but companies like you said, I think they need to focus on more quality games, even if it takes a little longer. But the thing is, you have to put more faith in your developers, because developers, like the president of Nintendo that died in like 2014, I can't remember his name. Do you remember, like the really down to earth, amazing? He was a developer.
I know who you're talking about, but the name is escaping me right now.
But he was a developer originally and at heart, so he really wanted to put out good product. And during his run, he put out great games for the handhelds and for the systems. And not everybody does that. And sometimes you have the reverse problem, which I want to talk to you about, the shift to something else. When you have a great game library, but your system is a piece of junk initially.
My God.
So, but Nintendo, let's just cap it off by saying, Nintendo should go back to a lot of its older, like, basics. Go back to basics when it comes to their leadership, because 12, 13 years ago, you had somebody in charge who was a game developer, who was a designer, a guy who made games, who was a gamer himself. The heart of a gamer running a gaming company is peak. It's the best.
Yeah.
And that's what they should focus on. But they don't want that. They don't want to have to wait a little bit longer to put out something that cements their legacy for another 20 years.
They just want another Mario spinoff,
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like the worst thing they can do is look for more investors at this time.
Yeah.
I think they need to scale it back.
Yeah.
If they want to go back to greatness. It's like one of those movies. It's like when Rocky lost against Club Relay, Mr. T and Rocky.
Right.
You got to go back to Apollo Creed, man.
There is no tomorrow.
Yeah. Seriously. Like, you got to go back to Apollo. And I think Nintendo's probably going to go through that.
Yeah.
They're going to have their own Apollo Creed moment, if you want to use that movie analogy, which I love using movies for analogies in life. It's just dope. But I think, but like I said, I think for these other amateur or unknown third-party companies that are making these handhelds like Steam, I think, dude, if this is the moment where you thinking this is going to be the jump for these systems, this is the time.
This is it.
This is it for Sega especially. I want Sega so bad to release a system or just a cloud gaming where I can just access every single game. And I'll pay $20 a month.
Yeah.
For Sega streaming. You telling me I can play all the Saturn games, all the Dreamcast, the Japanese library? I mean, licensing is going to be a nightmare. I get it.
Right.
But if you're able to provide that for me, I mean, this is the perfect time.
No, it is.
It is.
It's true. But now, shifting to something else you and I have talked about, we've all talked about this before, because talking about like a great library, but a crappy launch, let's talk about the 360.
Oh my God,
The 60 had a great library over its lifetime, great games that are still awesome and really playable today. They just really did that quality over quantity at the time. But their system from the jump was really bad. The Red Ring of Death is legendary.
Very
And
legendary.
Beyond that, I wanted to talk about how people would buy their system, take it home, and get the Red Ring of Death that night.
Out of the box.
Instantly, out of the box. And what did Microsoft do, and how did they resolve that? Because that was kind of interesting and infuriating at the same time.
So, with this is the thing that kind of confused me, because you got a company, Microsoft,
Right.
that has experience in the world of gaming with computers, and you finally find out what actually was the issue, and it goes down to basics of engineering, which me as a person that consistently uses soldering techniques to put things back together, to solder back microchips or micro soldering or replacing capacitors, there were a few issues with that. I think the major one was the failing of the GPU because of the heating and cooling aspect, because with heating things up and cooling them back down, you get movement in the board. This just happens everywhere.
Yeah.
This is the same law applies in construction, in laying down concrete. Heating and cooling loosens things up, loosens screws, blah 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 blah. Their issue, from what I finally came down to, this is years after in high school, because listen, as much as I hated the whole Xbox Red Ring of Death, I made money off of that.
Right.
I made money. In high
Because you
school,
fixed it.
I made bank.
Yeah. How did you do that?
So, early days of YouTube, I found out a lot of people were saying it's a thermal paste issue. So they were using, obviously mass production, you can't use the good stuff because obviously it affects the cost of the system.
You can, it just costs you more.
It just costs you more. So there has to be a price point,
Right,
you know,
right.
that market research, all that good stuff. I think, the original failures were, they used lead-free solder, which was a regulatory thing in across the industry. Is like no more lead solder. You have to use lead-free. But with that, the soldering points would crack with the heating and cooling and the contraction of the board. Also, boards would get warped because of the heat and the cooling.
Because you said this before, which is an interesting point as to why they got so heated, is because internet access.
Well, yeah, that was definitely one of the major issues.
Because
I think
people started playing from like a few hours to like all day.
Man, remember gaming became competitive around that point. You were having tournaments on 360s. You were having people playing Call of Duty for hours on end. So
The
if
systems weren't designed necessarily to handle that.
They said they tested it, but listen, when you're playing a game like Call of Duty Online that requires a lot of GPU, CPU power, you're going to get a lot of heating. And if you're telling me that your heat sinks weren't really made for that and you're using lead-free solder, that starts to become a problem in the world of heating and cooling and thermodynamics, if you want to call it. But that was one of the main issues. It was the heating and cooling aspect, which if you kind of realize, like sometimes when you turn off a computer, the fans on the inside stay on for a little bit to help, you know, throw the exhaust of the heat out. Well, Xbox didn't really do that. When you turned it off, it was off, gone. So you know, that was a major issue. And then you're using mass-produced silicone. I think it was silicone-based thermal paste, which the company Xbox was using Arctic 5, I think, at the time, which was it's thermal paste but with silver in it, pure silver, which is a heat conductor, which is expensive. But that's what they ended up using, I would think, to fix that issue. But even then, it still didn't fix the issue, because the heating and cooling was the main issue, which caused cracks in the solder points on the GPU, which would cause GPU failure or CPU failure.
Red ring of death.
Red ring of death. So yeah, essentially it was a thermal paste heating issue, but the fallout, the domino effect from that was what would happen to the board over time, which was, you know, the board would start to warp. With the heat and the cooling, it would warp the other way, so it would loosen other solder joints, and things didn't work properly. But yeah, internet became affordable. You know, DSL and cable internet were fast internet, so people were playing for hours on end. And that was a main issue, was the heating and cooling system for the Xbox 360, which lost billions of dollars from what I remember.
But how would they address because, you know, when you buy something new, it should work. If it breaks right out of the box, you should instantly be able to send it in and get a free fix. So that's not what happened, though.
No. So here's the thing. So later on, I've read articles, and even recently I've been reading articles. And you know what the towel method was?
It's literally like letting it overheat with a towel over it, right? And letting the cooling gel
No, that let the solder points heat up and then remelt because of the heat on the inside. And then maybe fix it. But it's a temporary fix, because at that point the board was already warped.
There's no way to unwarp it.
Yeah. Once the board is warped on you, the points, especially with those type of solder points on a GPU or CPU, would eventually take its toll and just not work. So that was one of the big issues. But essentially, had they used good thermal paste off the bat, maybe charged an extra $5 more for the system, they wouldn't have lost billions of dollars.
Seriously.
You know?
Small cost for overall.
But those are design flaws that happen because you rush production of something. And everybody's trying to get the new system out. How's PlayStation already talking about PS6? That's wild.
PS5 came out 5 years ago.
But still.
How is Xbox talking about like a new system already as well?
Yeah, and it's again this rush to produce. We do that on everything, dude. We do it with food. We do it with clothing, and it's
sometimes we just want to get things over with, just get it done.
Yeah.
But I think why they're trying to rush into it is because they're trying to meet market demand.
Yeah, but you know what? To be honest, like, are people really calling up Microsoft, telling them, hey, dude, you need to release the new system soon?
I think it's not more so that it needs to be a new system, but it's the trends that they see where people want that full backwards compatibility, because that's the rumor for PS6 and then this new Xbox console.
Well, yeah, I think, and again, this is what happens when I personally don't think that there are people calling up Xbox or calling up Sony at this moment and saying, hey, dude, you need to release a PlayStation 6 soon, because if not, I'm going to lose my shit. No, it's the investors that want more return on their money, so they're putting pressure on the presidents and the CEOs and the COOs to put more pressure on the developers to rush production.
Because I don't think people remember that it's not the games, it's not the movies, it's the players that make the companies the most money. VCRs, it wasn't the tapes that made the money, it was the VCRs, selling VCRs. Yeah. So that's why they stopped making that's why VHS eventually stopped being manufactured, because the VCRs, they're like, well, we're not making money on VCRs anymore. Everybody's already got one, and it's going to last. So boom, same thing with the systems. people after a while, the games are just a way to get you to pay like $500, $600, $700 for a system, and that's where they make the bulk of their cash all at once. And
It's through the gaming.
because that's why, like with cameras, I've talked about this before. Companies will cripple their cameras, even the Canon C70, which is like a kind of like consumer grade film camera, but it's a consumer pro camera and costs a lot of money. But it's a crop sensor, which it's a smaller sensor size. And then the C90 came out with a full frame sensor. You want the full frame because that gives you more depth of field. The background is blurrier. It's more cinematic. But they do things like that or cripple the HDMI out so you can't get a clean 8K, 4K, or whatever it is. You can now. But for years they kept crippling those things so you would buy the next gen every time.
And I think, and it's a good thing that you brought that up, because I think that's where Nintendo's headed. They want to have full control of the lifeline of your console.
Yeah.
And that, whatever miserable fuck thought about that idea,
Yeah.
will be the downfall.
Yeah.
Of Nintendo.
Because Nintendo has always used outdated technology, even with their Game Boy. They knew that wasn't the cutting edge thing. And the next episode, we're going to have an Atari expert.
Nice.
And the thing is, they had the Atari Lynx at the same time that the original Game Boy came out, and it was a left-handed, right-handed system. You could flip it and use it, and it would flip automatically internally. And it was a color screen, and it was just a better system.
Yeah.
But Nintendo still won because of their marketing and the nostalgia that was growing with their gameplay and their characters. So you had like Mario was still beating them out, even though their games were more advanced, in certain respects. But their system was definitely more advanced, and it was a better system. But it just lost. Nintendo they understood there was a certain philosophy when it came to it about doing the best with what you have with older tech. They knew when they were building the Game Boy that it was already out of date. The tech was old. We've talked about this before. And I think that's still the philosophy they're going by now. Not the principles of, 15 years ago Nintendo when it comes to their games and quality games and putting out quality over quantity. But I think they're going back to that because their consoles are always behind. The Wii wasn't on par with the Xbox, I think 360 or whatever it was.
Whatever that generation
was.
yeah.
The Wii U kind of was. It was kind of getting there, but it was still behind. And then the Switch should have been a 1080p system right out the box. It wasn't, and then you got to get the OLED, and then they keep just crippling the new releases so you'll buy whatever comes next, because we've talked about this too. Nintendo and other companies, they know certain systems they have are going to fail.
Yeah.
And they just use that money to fund the next one that they think is going to be a bigger hit.
This might be an unpopular opinion, I don't know, but I still think to this day, knowing how companies work internally in these big corporations, I still think that the Wii U was a beta test, market test for gamers for the Switch, but also a funding machine for the Switch. You're not going to sell me on that. It's too similar. You're telling me that it has to be tethered, and in a period of a few years, it doesn't have to be tethered. Well, since things have always not been tethered in that generation. What is it, Apple AirPlay? Apple AirPlay was out during the Wii U, right? Where you can just display the image of your screen on your phone to the TV. So you don't sell me on that shit that you have to be within a certain distance. And no, these companies source technology from the same people and the same code writers and same developers. And I still think that some people, I've only had very few people say, you know what, I agree with you on that, which you don't have to, but it just seems it's
too suspicious.
It's like, you ever seen that meme where Sting from WCW takes his mask off and it's a mask of Sting and it's literally him again? That is what that is the Switch with the Wii U. It's literally the Wii U it's like, or the Switch is a Wii U with just like,
or that meme with The Office, like corporate wants you to find the difference between these two pictures.
They're the same picture. They're the same picture.
It's funny because PlayStation took notes, but obviously they took the wrong notes and fucking released the Portal.
Oh God!
It's literally like selling you the Wii U, and then here's the Wii U gamepad separately.
Yeah. No, I know. It's true. And they just, man, it was just such a rabbit hole.
Waste.
It was such a waste. And look at the PS Portal and how it just was so much promise to be just like the Steam Deck or things like that, but it turned out to be a Wii U ripoff. That just, even with the patch that they came out with, I mean, you guys at the shop won't even take them still.
Heck no, because
they take
build quality is horrible.
You guys
on the Portal, my nephew, he got one for Christmas. I mentioned this before. He got one for Christmas. like 4 months in, the left stick, it doesn't let his character move forward and back, only left to right.
Stick drift in a couple of months.
It's not even drift. It's
Fail-
lack of
it's like
drift. It's
failure.
failure of movement.
Oh, God.
And then you got to pay the highest tier subscription to even like stream games.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
their library is so limited.
They
I
went.
heard,
They
like,
went
the-
total Nintendo. Wow, I'm gonna say that now. This company went total Nintendo.
Yeah, and I hear you like your internet connection is supposed to be like top tier.
It has to be
also.
top
Yeah.
tier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous.
Like at a coffee shop, sure you can play, but it's gonna be like choppy as hell.
Yeah, I saw a dude even pull up to a Starbucks, and even in the Starbucks, it wasn't.
It's not.
It
It's
was
not
trash.
it.
Oh man! But to go back to what I was saying before, basically the thing about Microsoft around the 360 era about the red ring of death is they would charge you when you sent your console back.
So like the official word was, we'll pay for the repair, and if you paid somebody else, we'll reimburse you for that. But you had to fill out this massive form
Right.
with all the information. A lot of times people went to like these small shops, they didn't get their money back. They were just like, this is not an approved and authorized. It had to be an authorized, which most people at that time weren't authorized fixers.
No,
for
for
Xbox.
360,
You
it
had
just
to-
come out.
You had to like
360
message them or like write them a letter. Hey, I'm gonna fix this person's console. Hope you don't mind.
Yeah.
But didn't they charge you for that? There was a part of it they still charged you
and-
for.
And they said that they covered shipping, but that was untrue because I had friends in high school that sent out their 360 and they were charged the shipping, and for the shipping to send it out and getting back was $60.
Jeez, but did you have to pay for the parts or the labor?
So some people said they did, but this is when they went through unauthorized Microsoft repair companies. So in the mall, you know, the guy that repaired cell phones,
Yeah.
well, he
Yeah.
also repaired Xboxes, but because he wasn't an authorized Microsoft repairman, even if you showed the receipt of the repair, you didn't get your reimbursement.
Jeez.
Kind of
So-
like what Nintendo's trying to
So
do.
yeah, did they
Right,
lose? Did they
yeah.
lose $1 billion? Yeah, they lost $1 billion in paying employees and for parts and labor, maybe. But a lot of the stories I heard from people, they weren't getting reimbursed shit. That's why I was doing them. I was doing them, and I was charging half the price. You know, and that's why I said I made a lot of money off the 360 hardware failure.
Wow.
Because for me, a lot of times was I would reflow the board just as like a safety precaution because I knew of the whole contact points like being broken off because
Right.
I would pull boards out and they would be bellied. It's not supposed to be bellied. It's supposed to be a
No.
flat board.
Yeah.
So obviously you're seeing that the hot and cold is causing problems to the board. And at that point, I would fix it, but yeah, after that, it's in your core. Like I can't do much. But for
Right.
me, it was heating the CPU as a precautionary measure, and then adding Arctic 5 thermal paste.
Right. And that did
fixed
the
it.
trick.
That did the trick, and I charged I think $50, $40-50 for each system. But I was doing them for people in my high school, and the local high school found out, and I was getting people like showing up at my high school from like the public high school. Hey, dude, can you do my friends? So at one point, my room was filled with 360.
Jeez.
Yeah, dude, filled. I must have had at one point. I must have had like maybe 50 to 60 Xbox 360s in my room, and this is my tiny ass room. You know what I had.
Better 360s.
Yeah, right.
Crazy story, dude. In high school, I didn't have a bank account because I wasn't 18 yet. So
Right.
you know, I just had cash from whatever I worked and here and there. But I started to have a lot of cash on me, and I would hide my cash in a little cup, like a popcorn bucket cup, behind my TV, and that's where I kept all my cash. And it was
Right.
like, you know, a few.
He doesn't do that anymore. For
No,
anybody
no.
who's curious,
Yeah. Now I have.
Yeah,
a
and he
bank
doesn't live
account.
there anymore, I
Yeah.
just in case.
Yeah.
And like I just kept my cash there, and I had a few thousand at that point in cash saved up because I didn't have expenses, dude.
Yeah.
I didn't pay rent, you know. I just
Yeah.
used it to buy video games. My mom found it.
Oh no.
Yeah, my mom found it, and the funny thing is, I come back from school one day, and she took all the money and she put it out, spread it out on my bed. Yeah, literally took all the bills and just spread them out.
Was she angry?
Well, the whole thing was I walked into my room, and she walked in behind me. Well, I opened the door, and I'm like, "What the fuck? Why is my money? What's going on?" And my mom walks in behind me, and she's like, where the fuck did you get all this money? In
Are
Spanish.
you selling drugs?
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
what she asked. She goes, are you selling drugs? Like,
Are you hustling?
Are you stealing? Like, what the fuck?
Hooking?
Like, what's going on?
What's going on?
Yeah.
And I'm
What's
like,
going on in this
do you
town?
not see the stacks of video game consoles here in my room? Like, what do you think I have these here for vanity? Like,
Right.
this is I repair stuff.
Where do you think I got the money for all these Xboxes?
Exactly. like she's like, I always wondered why you're always buying your own toys and your own games and stuff. And I was like, yeah, man. Like I was hustling money, but that I mean, in a way, I'm thankful for it because
Yeah.
it did help me learn about systems and it broke down a lot of stuff for me. The early days of YouTube were awesome because the instructions were clear cut.
Yeah.
This is what it was. You had maybe 3 or 4 instructional videos, not 10, where you had to research and see who was the best one.
10,000 more.
Dude, it's
like,
crazy
everybody
now.
makes a
Everybody-
tutorial. Yeah.
Which everybody has their own way, but
How to drink water tutorial.
again, like the over options and too
Stop
many
doing that.
options just like plays with you. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, but back then it was 3 or 4 instructional videos and that's it.
Wow.
And yeah, man. So Xbox 360, kudos to them for fucking up because I made a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know,
You made the $1 billion they lost.
Right. Because now
I got a cut of my billion.
Right. That's right. Yeah, a third of it was yours. So when it came to other systems, I think the contemporary system was the PS3 at the time.
Yeah.
Now, what issue did that have?
So PS3,
The yellow light.
From what I remember, at least during that Xbox fucking like shit show,
Yeah.
PS3 really didn't have any issues.
Nice.
It was down the road, like towards the end of the life of the PS3, where they started running into kind of like the same issue, which was a big system with a lot of computing power, creates a lot of heat.
Yeah.
Thermal paste is mass produced, so it's not a top quality thermal paste. Plus, you know, the emulation, man, the backwards compatibility on the PS3 required a lot of work from the PS3. A lot of heat was produced,
Yeah.
and maybe that was the drawback to that. But you know, if you went down in flames, what a way to go out.
Yeah.
You know?
That was a great system. That was
Oh,
a great,
God.
that was the last time PlayStation did reverse compatibility.
PS5 doesn't count.
People are
No.
'Cause there's
using,
only
or
PS4
were,
games.
people were using PS3s to mine Bitcoin, the backwards compatible or the fat. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, the fat version of the PS3. People were in England or UK. They found a farm full of them. Wow. Also, they were used for the telescopes to peer into space. They would combine them all and use them. I don't know what the exact specific reason for them to be used was.
Yeah.
But they were using the computing power on the PS3s to look into space and maybe process images. That's something, you know, you guys can look further into, but
Wow.
that's why the PS3 was an amazing system. Bulky as hell, heavy, yeah.
But there's a reason for that.
But you're telling me that I can turn smoothing on and make my PS1, PS2 games look a little better on an HDMI screen, like, you know,
With
that's
great rumble,
That's amazing.
wireless.
So if you're telling me like over time they're fading out, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I don't care. Thank you for a great system.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting out something that was quality and allowed me to enjoy my old media. And that's something that I think we've talked about in the shop is where PS6 is headed and Sony
Yeah.
sending out secret like not shoppers but people asking questions like how much would you pay for a PlayStation 6?
What do you
or
want in it? What
what do you
features?
want in it? And
I hope it's free.
yeah, right. Imagine. I always say, listen, man, if PlayStation drops the bomb that you're telling me that I can play my old games in 4K on one system, all the way down the PS1, but we're gonna charge you $1,000, but it's gonna be a quality system, take it.
Yeah.
I'll gladly give you my $1,000 that I work hard for.
Yeah.
Because if you're telling me that I can do that, and that's what I want as a nostalgic gamer, which is the ones with the adult money,
Yeah.
where I can buy it whenever I want,
Yep.
you know, not have to wait for Christmas or get good grades from my parents, you know, stuff like that.
Fiddlesticks.
Then hell yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Charge me $1,000, charge me 1,100, 1,200.
Well-
You're giving me an amazing console.
Yeah, that's what the new handhelds, the Rogue Ally X with the Xbox crossover, that's going to be a grand, you know. So some of those are going to do that. So, yeah, if Sony does that and they go finally or they finally go and, you know, enter the road of reverse compatibility and just do that like Xbox does, you know, it's going to be huge for them. I mean, it's going to be a huge one. And now they're doing cross-platforming. So I think Xbox is giving them like Gears of War. I know, and
Yeah.
then PlayStation is trading with them. They're powerhouses, and it's going to be the end of Nintendo, I think, as we know it today, at least.
Yeah, I think Nintendo, I think one of the things that I think they're protecting their games so much is they're starting to see the walls close in on them. And everybody's starting, like I said before, everybody's starting to catch up. And I like to bring soccer analogy into everyday life because
Sure.
Chileans, they tend to like, there's two things that Chileans talk about in like when you hang out with your homies. It's soccer and politics. You know, that's the main topic of conversation.
Hey.
And I look at it as like Nintendo being the Brazil of soccer back in the 80s and 90s when they were powerhouses, they were feared, but now the world caught up. You know, the world caught up to Brazil's soccer, and now Brazil's not the amazing team they were. They're getting beat. They're struggling to qualify for the World Cup. They're going through coaches. They're going through this whole revolution, and I think that's where Nintendo's at right now. They're seeing that everybody else caught up, and the technology is there, and people are now peering, you know, to other companies and saying, "Hey, dude, what are you going to offer me? Because these assholes are pulling this stuff on me." You know. Maybe that's the reason why they're not allowing people to resell their carts, and they want more money, and you know, it's just, it's going to be interesting to see where the Switch 2 is going to take Nintendo.
Yeah, it's not going to be able to compete. I mean, I don't think, unless they want all these licenses all of a sudden to pop up. I mean, unless because they're doing the Halo Master Chief Collection. They're doing some good stuff. The question is it going to be enough?
Have you seen in person what a Switch 2 looks like on screen?
No,
No, have you one?
Yeah.
You have?
It's pretty good.
Compared to the Switch 1,
OLED.
Yeah. Compared, I'd say...
is it a huge step
For me, I'd say so.
in graphics?
I feel like it's finally being able to play the Switch games the way they were supposed to be played.
Yeah.
It's not choppy. It's so smooth.
So it's doing what the Switch one was
Should've
supposed to
been-
do
yeah.
in
Supposed to do.
2017.
Literally, you pop in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, even freaking Pokemon games, and they look phenomenal. They run up perfectly smooth, like 60.
Yeah.
like they're supposed to.
Like they're supposed to.
And that's
Yeah.
the thing. The bar is so low for Nintendo that we're just like glazing over them because, you know, their games are finally running properly.
They run like a PS Vita. They run like a Vita.
They're only 10 years behind. Good for them.
Dude, I love my Vita. I
The Vita's great.
love it. I just recently did and I got one of the homies that's gonna help me out. I did the Pico mod that we talked about on
for
the
the
Switch.
Switch
dude.
one,
and
yeah,
he's
and the
been
OLED.
showing me the stuff that you can do with the Pico mod and the Pico Fly, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a dope mod for the Switch.
It's going to be amazing.
That's kind of like
It's a
the
new
reason
era.
that might take me away from the Vita now and put me onto this is a Switch 1 though.
Yeah.
Put me onto that first
You
Switch.
talking about Alex, right?
Yeah.
Dude, he brought in like his personal modded Switch today to the shop,
Yeah.
and then he showed us he was playing freaking Resident Evil on it, like
Yeah.
the first one.
Yeah,
It
I
literally
told-
runs
Wow.
perfect.
He did mine, and I told he's like I've been sending him just lists of games from certain systems and Neo Geo and
that he all legally owns, by the way.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
owns-
Oh, yeah,
We're
yeah.
all
He
collectors.
owns
We
them.
all
yeah,
have all
dude,
these
he's
cartridges
got
ourselves.
hundreds of games.
Yeah.
Do not underestimate people.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
have hundreds of games.
Hundreds, more than hundreds.
You know,
yeah,
I have.
dude.
It's just
I am hundreds of dollars in debt.
yeah.
Because of the games.
I've spent
yeah,
a lot of money
yeah,
on
games.
games. I'm a toy hunter or game hunter too, so I get them on
Yeah.
the low. But the that's where quantity
Kicks in.
matters.
Because you're
kicks in.
buying quality.
Yeah, yeah.
Your quality, I mean, your quantity is of quality items. So
Exactly.
that's okay. You're not making things fast, cheap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you know what? Thank you so much for being with us, man. There's
Yeah,
so much
man.
we can talk about because you're such a wealth of knowledge. I've personally learned so much from you about the
Yeah,
internals
dude.
of
I
gaming and
appreciate
machines.
that.
I now take apart PS4s and check them out. I can take them all apart, put them back together because of the things I've learned from you. So
And
I've learned how to do things like
That's
that.
awesome. I love it when people learn how to do things, and I'll have people come into the shop sometimes and say, "What can I do?" And I'll give them a quick explanation, and then they'll come back and say, "Dude, it worked.
Yeah.
It's doing its thing," and that's an awesome feeling.
I brought in a controller because I have a Gully Kit King Kong Pro 2 for like the Switch or for whatever gaming, and it's and it wasn't working right. Like no, one of the buttons was sticking, and then you had just a simple fix for me, and I've used that ever since, and it's perfect. That was the first thing I think that was the first thing I ever brought into you guys. But after that, I'm like, these guys are good, and they didn't charge me for it. So I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah. Double great, but it's great. Again, thanks for being on the show. I'm sure if you want to come back, please do.
Oh, dude, I would love to chit chat about certain things and get into, because there's a lot of wormholes that you could go in with like some of the stuff in gaming and like other systems, like systems that attempted to jump into the market.
Yeah. Oh, that's a huge one.
Sega Saturn is like you can do. There's so much you can talk about Sega Saturn. The Jaguar, the like you mentioned, the Lynx,
Atari,
the Tiger handhelds, like Gamecom. Those little handhelds
was it Play and Go, or what are the first handhelds? The
Tiger.
No.
The Game and Watch.
The Game and Watch.
Game and Watch. Dude. Those are now highly collectible and mad money. Like those are, and I love hunting for those. The Donkey Kong, the Mario versions, like
Zelda.
The Zelda versions. They remade them.
Yeah.
So like that stuff is a whole other segment within itself. So
we got a lot to talk about for a long time,
dude.
We love the retro stuff
to
along with the
new, and get into that stuff.
Well, you heard that here, folks. He's coming back.
Yeah.
Whether you want to or not.
I mean, this time though, I'm only gonna bring one beer for Juan, because I think
I only had one beer.
I think the giggles.
Well, we'll just give you half a glass this time. Half
We'll
the show is him laughing.
You're greedy.
We'll give you half a glass of beer and then a little glass of warm milk to put you to bed.
I'm gonna fall asleep here, man.
I was gonna say halfway through the show, he's just gonna be out. But thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Gamers at the End of the World. Once again, I'm Ty Justice.
I'm disappointed.
That was good.
Once again, I'm Ty Justice.
JCPR.
I'm Pablo, aka Retrobutta.
Check him out online on Instagram, and we'll see you next time.